What's up, Bodyweight Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And today I want to start a short mini series on training the stuff that matters, cutting out the BS, cutting out the stuff that doesn't necessarily work or is just the fluff, and really getting down to the things that are going to give you the most gains. Now, I say this in context of just kind of stuff I've seen on social media. There's a lot of things posted that are innovative and new drills and try this and all that sort of stuff, and it's great. I've no problem against that. But I think that it should be mentioned that ultimately, if you want to make good progress, these sort of things don't really matter. All of the funny accessory stuff doesn't really matter. What matters is getting extremely strong, extremely proficient with the core movements. And that's kind of what I want to share with you today with episode 1, which is going to be on the big 5 body weight movements for the upper body. In later episodes, we're going to be going over the big movements for the lower body and also flexibility as well, which is, in my opinion and my training practice, which is this blend of handstands, bodyweight strength, a little bit of weighted leg training, and obviously working towards advanced flexibility positions. I'm not saying this is right. I'm not saying this is the only way to do things. Ultimately, you can decide on what you want to do. If you're into what I'm into, this is my opinion on it. So the big 5 for the upper body are very simply the handstand push-up, the one-arm chin-up, the planche, the front lever, and the dip. These 5 movements are going to have you covered at developing a strong, a muscular, and a well-balanced overall upper body. Obviously, there is much more to it than just kind of what I've said here, and I want to provide a lot more context in today's video, as well as some recommendations, and hopefully to help you then go and apply this, because again, knowing is nice, but applying is better. A quick shout out here to Philip Chubb, the Mindful Mover, because I know he's been talking a lot about his big 5 and the importance of focusing on fewer things and being efficient. So he certainly deserves a shout out here, although this is a principle that is commonly accepted in, powerlifting, weightlifting movements. It's just kind of how people go and train. It's just when we get to bodyweight training, the applications of positions and skills and drills can just be so wide and so varied. We lack that consistency element, which ultimately leads to better progress. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about the groupings and the order in which these exercises are presented. So it goes without saying that these groupings also encompass their progressions towards it. So the handstand push-up, that's going to cover things like the pike push-up, etc. The one-arm chin-up will cover the chin-up, the pull-up, etc. But I will also add that for those who aren't particularly bothered by the one-arm chin-up, it might be worth just replacing this for heavy weighted chin-ups, because the injury cost or benefit is much less in that regard than the one-arm chin-up. But the one-arm chin-up is still a worthy goal to work towards. The planche also encompasses basically push-up progressions towards planche, and also likewise the front lever covers progressions, bodyweight rows towards that position. You could think of this as a traditional vertical, horizontal push and pull pattern split, but I personally prefer to think about this in terms of patterns of movement. I've also ranked these exercises in terms of my personal perception of importance, with the dip being the notable exception, but we'll get to that one later. In my opinion, I think it is much more effective for people to be working towards the handstand push-up and the one-arm chin-up or heavy chin-ups in the initial phases and certainly the earlier days of training. Because the muscles being worked are quite common from handstand push-up to the planche and chin-up towards the front lever, there is going to be a decent amount of carryover in both directions. But the reason I recommend developing handstand push-up and the chin-up first is that developing that bent arm strength is really what gives us the capacity to go on and work towards those straight arm strength skills. This is just my opinion, but from my experience coaching and developing my own personal practice, I think most people will get better progress if they work to getting strong and efficient with the handstand push-up, with the chin-up. Say, for example, achieving 5x5 chest wall handstand push-ups and 5x5 at about 30% additional body weight on a chin-up as their kind of sort of starting point before really taking on and focusing on the front lever. It's going to develop the strength in the areas that we need to make that working much easier in the long term. This doesn't mean that you can't work on it concurrently, can't work on it at the same time, or you can't focus on the planche and the front lever first. You do what you want to do. If you're focusing on these big 5 movements, you're going to make good progress. Now, this is where we get to the dip. The dip is a little bit of the odd one out. The reason I've put this in is because I think it is essential at the beginner phases of bodyweight training. I think it is very, very useful to build at least some proficiency in the dip. You don't need to take it to the extreme that you would maybe take the chin up with going really, really heavy with weighted stuff, unless that is your particular passion. It's not going to make the handstand push-up or the planche any easier. But when we get to those initial stages where we're just trying to get strong, we're just trying to develop strength and structural integrity in the shoulder, getting to 10 to 15 dips with just body weight is a really useful thing. I also like the dip here because ultimately with bodyweight training, we end up doing a lot of overhead movements when it comes to developing handstand and handstand push-up. The dip is a nice movement that counteracts this pattern and provides some structural balance overall if we do train it a little bit. It certainly is useful if you really go heavy down the handstand route to have that balance there. Finally, I want to finish up with a little bit of application here. So I've got a few things that I want to mention that maybe is worth considering taking away. Number one is that we don't need to work on everything at the same time. Although working towards these 5 movements primarily will help focus your training, it still is a little bit broad and demanding on the body. We need to consider the SAID principle, specific adaptation to impose demand. Specific being the key word here. If we're doing too many different things, we get general adaptation to impose demands, which is ultimately going to be poor progress in many as opposed to good progress in a few. As I kind of mentioned initially, I think working towards primarily handstand push-up, chin-up, it should be your main focus, and then bringing in some planche elements later on, and ultimately periodizing this. So having different focuses in your program is going to be one of the best ways to go rather than trying to do it all at once. I would also mention that this reductionist element of training also allows us to actually incorporate more of the fun stuff, more of the exciting stuff, more of the skills, because ultimately we're making our training more efficient. We're going to be using our energy and our recovery capacity more efficiently. So hopefully it gives us a little bit more room to learn other skills, such as handstand, or actually other sports and other activities that we might be interested in. Just again, note that ultimately the more things we begin to pile on the plate, we come with the same initial problem that we had, which is our stimulus is too general and we're going to make poor progress and everything. But you've got to be able to have fun with this thing. Training is there to support the things that you want to do in life, not necessarily to be your life. Finally, I just want to mention the importance of still adding variation within this framework. The Big Five is there to give you a guidance of what patterns of training we should be focusing on primarily. Doesn't mean that we're going to be doing the same exercise day in, day out for years to come. We want to apply some variation because that's an important element of adaptation and making progress with training. It's just that variation should be applied within the pattern that we want to develop. So let me give you a very simple example with this one. Say one phase we're working towards handstand push-up, chin-up. We're going to do some pike push-ups and some normal chin-ups for 6 to 8 reps, 4 sets. That's one phase. Next phase, maybe we do some partial handstand push-ups for 5 sets of 2 to 3 reps and some heavy pull-ups for 2 to 3 reps. We're still sticking within that framework, the Big Five. We're still working those overall patterns, but we've added variation in terms of our loading patterns and our rep range. This is going to ensure that we're still making strength, but we're making strength gains in a relevant way to our overall goals. And finally, the last bit is that the goal isn't necessarily the point, the end position, handstand push up, the planche, the front lever, all of that sort of stuff. Ultimately, it's what working towards that goal allows you to do. By focusing on these 5 movements, you should develop a well-rounded upper body strength. It actually will enable you to do probably most other things that you want to do, potentially without really having to train them, because you've got that solid foundation, that solid base of strength. So ultimately, this focus, this specificity that we have with our training and that long-term consistency should give us the freedom to be able to do most other things that we want to do with our training practice and our physical practice, whether that's outside sports, whether that's just general life hobbies, or if we just want to be strong and a beast and look good naked. It's going to help you accomplish all of those things. And there is some things that maybe this doesn't cover that is worth covering, such as, external rotator exercises and some accessory movements that are worth adding in. But my point really is that focusing on these 5 movements will provide 80-90% of the gains. The other stuff is like the icing on top of the cake. It provides minimal impact as opposed to just getting strong with these. If you have an opinion on this one, if you want to share how you like to sort of focus your training up and your opinion on this, then please do so by leaving a comment in the comment section down below. As I said, this is my opinion. If you enjoyed this video, if you found it helpful, which hopefully is intended to be, make sure you hit a thumbs up button and support the channel. Right next to it is that subscribe button if you want to join the Bodyweight Warrior tribe. Don't miss out on any more future videos. But other than that, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a strong week and peace.